Hello, everybody. Welcome back to part 2 of Module 2. In this lecture, we'll be looking at the rest of the Dalit movements that left a mark in the socio political scenario of India. And today, we'll begin with, or rather, today, we'll continue with the Adi Dharma movement. The Adi Dharma religion was started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Debendranath Tagore, and Prasanna Tagore. The significance of Adi Dharma movement lies in the fact that it is the first caste-less movement organized in India. But the greatest paradox also lies here. It was organized by the Brahmins and not by the Dalits. And these Brahmins were those who were excommunicated from their community because they questioned Hinduism. And they believed that Hinduism was a corrupt religion and it was also debased. As a result, these Brahmins were ostracized and they suffered a lot in the public eye. So they decided to come up with a religion of their own, and this was called the religion of Adi Dharma or Eka Daivatvam. Now let's take a look at the doctrinal beliefs they had. They believed in one God, just one supreme God, not anymore. Secondly, according to Adi Dharma, there is nothing called salvation, and so there is no way of achieving it. Now, this was very different from the belief Hinduism had, because in Hinduism, salvation was something that was accessible only to those who belonged to the superior caste. Again, that was denied to people who belong to the lower caste. When it comes to Adi Dharma religion, they believe that there is nothing called salvation and therefore there is no way of achieving it. They also believe that there is nothing called heaven or hell or rebirth. They did away with all these concepts that we find in Hinduism. Next, they also said that there is nothing called a holy text or a scripture or even a priest who can represent a religion. So, this was going against probably some of the very important concepts of Hinduism. So, in other words, you can also say that Adi Dharma was a protest against Hinduism. This religion was a protest against Hinduism. And finally, they also made no distinction between men or women, people who were part of this religion. According to Adi Dharma, distinctions like caste, color, gender were all man made and therefore made no sense to them. In 1848, Adi Brahma Dharma published the doctrine of Debendranath Tagore, which held Hindu doctrines to be correct and baseless. They upheld Vedas of pre-Aryan period that reflected the ideals that there is nothing called a caste, high or low, and the fact that all are born equal. Later in 1867, the Adi Dharma movement lost its support from young men who left the group under the influence of Christian missionaries. However, Adi Dharma movement continues to be one of the greatest social reform movements in India who had the courage to question the very important concepts of Hinduism. And that brings us to the next very important movement, probably one of the most important Dalit movements that took place in India, the Dalit Buddhist movement. Buddhism was a great influence on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He was agitated at the way Hinduism had treated him and people like him who belonged to the lower caste. He even said that I might have born a Hindu, but I will not die as a Hindu. He was a follower of Navayana Buddhism, which was actually a reinterpretation of Buddhism by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar himself. After being disappointed with Hinduism and its discrimination meted out to its believers, he turned to Buddhism. But at the same time, he rejected the Buddhist concept of Four Noble Truths and non self. He found them to be pessimistic and flawed. Now, for your information, the Four Noble Truths that Buddhism upholds are the first one is dukkha or suffering, which according to Buddhism is an integral part to the life on earth. Next is samudaya or the origin of this suffering, which Buddhism believes that it comes from attachment to a lot of worldly things. Third is nirodha or how to end this dukkha or suffering. And Buddhism comes up with the view that you have to renounce all these worldly pleasures if you have to bring an end to the sufferings that you experience. And finally, magga or the path. And the path refers to the path that a person or a believer of Buddhism has to take in order to renounce all the worldly pleasures and thereby attain moksha, so that and also bring an end to its sufferings. So these were the four noble truths of Buddhism, which B.R. Ambedkar found to be very pessimistic and therefore rejected them. And he also rejected the Buddhist concept of non self, which claimed that there is nothing called a permanent soul or a permanent self in this world. Instead, he went on to give an interpretation of his own, and thus was born Navayana Buddhism. The Dalit Buddhist movement was launched by B.R. Ambedkar in 1956, where almost 500,000 Dalits joined him and got converted to Buddhism. And this tells you how much of a great influence Ambedkar was in the society during that time. This movement also was a socio political movement among the Dalits. It challenged the caste system and also demanded for the rights of Dalits. India has a great history of Buddhism, and this re emerged in 1891 when the Sri Lankan leader Anagarika Dharmapala founded the Mahabodhi Society. Many Dalits employ the term Ambedkarite Buddhism for Navayana Buddhism because it was, you can say that it was a brainchild of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Ambedkar, on his conversion to Navayana Buddhism, took 22 vows, and he also prescribed them to his followers as well. And the 22 vows included the following: I shall have no faith in Brahma, Vishnu, and Maheshwara, nor shall I worship them. I shall have no faith in Rama and Krishna, who are believed to be incarnation of God, nor shall I worship them. I shall have no faith in Gauri, Ganapati, and other gods and goddesses of Hindus, nor shall I worship them. I do not believe in the incarnation of God. I do not and shall not believe that Lord Buddha was the incarnation of Vishnu. I believe this to be sheer madness and false propaganda. I shall not perform Shraddha. I shall not act in a manner violating the principles and teachings of the Buddha. I shall not allow any ceremonies to be performed by Brahmins. I shall believe in the equality of man. I shall endeavor to establish equality. I shall follow the noble eightfold path of the Buddha. I shall follow the 10 paramitas prescribed by the Buddha. I shall have compassion and loving kindness for all living beings and protect them. I shall not steal. I shall not tell lies. I shall not commit carnal sins. I shall not take intoxicants like liquor, drugs, etc. I shall endeavor to follow the noble eightfold path and practice compassion and loving kindness in everyday life. I renounce Hinduism, which disfavors humanity and impedes the advancement and development of humanity. I firmly believe the Dharma of Buddha is the only true religion. I consider that I have taken a new birth. I solemnly declare and affirm that I shall hereafter lead my life according to the teachings of Buddha's Dharma. However, after Ambedkar's death, the popularity of the Dalit Buddhist movement diminished, and the followers did not come out strong enough to bargain with the existing dominant political parties. It also failed to generate the support and awareness among the public following Ambedkar's death. So it kind of slowly faded out, the Dalit Buddhist movement. But we still cannot ignore the fact that it has been one of the strongest Dalit movements that ever happened in the country. As the discussion moves forward, talking about caste as a social evil, we must not forget the role played by the Brahma Samaj and Arya Samaj. The Brahma Samaj and Arya Samaj that were established in the 19th century. The Brahma Samaj worships the Brahman. They do not make discrimination in the name of caste, creed, color, or race. This reminds us of the Adi Dharma movement, the first casteless movement in India. They welcomed people without any distinction. And this was started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Debendranath Tagore, father of Rabindranath Tagore, in 1828 in Calcutta. They aimed at reforming the prevailing Brahmanism and its faulty methods. It was the 19th century. As we go on talking about caste as a social evil, we must not forget the role of Brahma Samaj and Arya Samaj in the 19th century. The Brahma Samaj worships the Brahman, the supreme god. They do not make discrimination in the name of caste, color, or creed, or a race. And this reminds us of the Adi Dharma movement, right? The first casteless movement in India. They welcomed people without any distinction. And this was started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Debendranath Tagore, father of Rabindranath Tagore, in 1828 in Calcutta. And they aimed at reforming the prevailing Brahmanism and its faulty methods. It was the 19th century. Remember, it was also the time
when the spirit of nationalism and democracy was on a rise. People were becoming more and more aware of their rights. But casteism was still prevalent. But the question of reforming the society was also looming above. The growing nationalist spirit, spread of education, ideas about the West and its culture, everything strengthened the resolve to reform. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, also called as the father of Indian Renaissance, found Hindu society being controlled by social evils. He advocated the spread of science among the people, and his biggest achievement is a key role he played in abolishing sati in 1829. He was also against the caste system that was so rigid and hindered the growth of a society. He promoted Adi Dharma as a solution. The leaders were people who had traveled and read a lot. They found so many practices in the Indian society as debilitating. But by the end of the 19th century, the influence of Brahma Samaj started degenerating. One of the biggest drawbacks being the fact that it was confined to the urban educated class. Though their doctrines and ideals were laudable, it failed to attract people from lower caste. So it could never transform into a mass movement. And in 1866, there was a split between Devendranath Tagore, supported by the old Brahmos, and Keshav Chandra Sen, who stood for progressive ideas, which finally led to the division of Brahma Samaj into two. Adi Brahma Samaj, led by Devendranath Tagore, and Brahma Samaj of India, led by Keshav Chandra Sen. The difference of opinion and lack of leadership finally led to its breakdown. In 1928, Arya Samaj was divided into two groups after differences in policies and opinions. The divide was based on the argument whether they should rely on science or go back to the Vedas. And those who went back to the Vedas and believed in that strongly were later on called as religious fanatics. All said, Arya Samaj took great efforts to eradicate a lot of social evils like its predecessors. Dayananda Saraswati played a key role in instigating nationalist spirit among Indians through the slogan India for Indians. On the other hand, if we look at it differently, there are historians who believe that the ideals of the Arya Samaj paved way to communalism. One of the biggest drawbacks of Arya Samaj was the Shuddhi movement. It was a purification process. It was a process of converting people from lower caste to mainstream Hinduism. Their intention was to get rid of the label of Dalit or an outcast by bringing them into the mainstream Hinduism, but this garnered a lot of criticism later. However, it continues to be the first socio-cultural Hindu organization to confront the social evil in an organized modern approach because they were involved in social reform and rehabilitation. I think it's time for us to discuss about what was happening around Kerala during this time. Whether we had great Dalit leaders, whether we had Dalit movements as such, how were the Dalits treated in a state like Kerala. Now, I think let's discuss more about that. When it comes to Kerala, though we consider and claim to be a progressive state, despite being literate, back in those days, the plight of the Dalits were not much different when compared to the plight of Dalits in other parts of India. They were badly treated in Kerala also. They were denied all social and political rights. They were denied everything basic like clothing. They had no means to good food. They had no means to good proper shelter. Those who belonged to the lower caste were not allowed to cover their torso, that's the upper part of the body, nor were they allowed to wear jewelry to decorate themselves, jewelry made out of silver or gold. Even if they had to decorate themselves, they had to depend on stones. So there were a lot of, if you look at the photographs of those times, you will find women from lower caste, you'll find photographs where they'll be found wearing stone necklaces and stone bangles and stone earrings. Two of the greatest social reform movements, Melmunda Samaram and Kallamala Samaram, were born as a protest against these. And we'll discuss more about that as we move forward. The 19th century saw a surge in the conversion of these Dalits to other religions like Christianity, after the atrocities of the caste system became unbearable to them. Finally, it was decided to abolish bonded labor in Travancore. Bonded labor was a system where the people of certain community had to spend their lives in slavery, in particular Brahminical or Nair households in Kerala. They were never given independence. They were bonded forever. So this system of bonded laborers, slavery, was brought to an end in Travancore and the princely states of Cochin and Malabar. Laws were passed by the Commissioner of Malabar, Maharani of Travancore, and the Diwan of Kochi in 1792, 1812, and 1814, respectively. And this happened because the IPC, or the Indian Penal Code, which again belongs to the British system, the Indian Penal Code declared it as a crime. Though it was a milestone in the history of Kerala, it couldn't do much with the living conditions of Dalits. You cannot say that with the abolition of slavery or bonded labor in Kerala, Dalits were uplifted. No, it did not happen. They continued with their poverty stricken lives, denied of every basic thing. The role of Christian missionaries needs to be mentioned here. They came along with the Western ideals that condemned caste division, and also the Christian missionaries played a very important role in spreading English education across the state. Not state necessarily, because back then it was Kerala. We were a collection of princely states. So Christian missionaries played a significant role in spreading education, and they condemned caste division. This inspired many people who belonged to the lower caste to renounce Hinduism and join Christianity, and to some extent, these people from lower caste to gain some self respect. The Malayali Memorial of 1891 was another uprising that took on the government. This was a memorandum submitted to the government of Travancore questioning the monopoly of Tamil Brahmins in the administrative post in the Travancore administration. It became popular due to the participation of people from various communities, because Malayali Memorial had representations from Nair community, from Irava community, from Christian community, and many other communities that were existing in Travancore during that time. Kerala has always been the torchbearer when it comes to social reform movements. Some of the very strong, powerful agitations or social reform movements have taken place in Kerala. And we are going to discuss about one such movement, one such satyagraha that was launched in Kerala. The Dalits were not allowed to use the roads to the temple in Vaikam. If you're familiar with the very popular Vaikam Shiva temple, those people who belong to the lower caste, they were not allowed to use the roads. We are not talking about temple entry, we are talking about the roads that went around the temple. They were not allowed to use it. In 1928, under the guidance of social reformers like T.K. Madhavan and K. Kelappan, the Vaikam Satyagraha was launched. A memorandum signed by 20,000 petitioners were submitted to the then ruler of Travancore, Regent Setulakshmi Bhai. With Gandhiji visiting Kerala during Vaikam Satyagraha, proving his or providing his support, things took a turn for the good. And Vaikam Satyagraha is still remembered as one of the most successful social reform movements in India. The year 1936 witnessed the temple entry proclamation made by the then ruler of Travancore, Sri Chitira Tirunal Balarama Varma. The proclamation granted all Hindus, irrespective of their caste, permission to enter temples in Kerala. Now, this was a result of strong agitations in the 19th century, born out of the awareness among people regarding democracy, nationalism, and individual rights. And here we must not fail to mention the name of the father of our nation, Gandhiji, who played a very important role in the upliftment of the Dalits, or the Harijans as he called them. Kerala was always a land that gave space and supported protest with a cause. There were three Dalit protest movements, very important ones, led by three Dalit leaders noted for their incredible leadership. Ayyangali and his Sadhu Jana Paripalana Sangham that was founded in 1907, Poigai Yohanan and his Pratyaksha Raksha Deva Sabha founded in 1909, and Pambadi John Joseph and his Travancore Cheramar Mahajana Sabha, founded in 1921. So let's discuss Ayyangali and his protest against the evils in the society. Ayyangali was born in Venganur in modern-day Thiruvananthapuram. Though his Dalit protests were primarily concerned with the upliftment of his own community, that's the Pulaya community, he is looked upon as a pioneer, as a leader by a lot of people who come from the lower caste. He was greatly influenced by the teachings of Sri Narayana Guru, again, a prominent figure who's looked upon as the father of Renaissance in Kerala. Though Ayyangali was denied education being a lower caste, he was very much aware of the social conditions of the time. He was well aware of the evils of caste system. And his first protest was to reclaim the public roads that were denied to the people of his community. In 1898, he, along with a group of Pulayas, walked along the public road, and midway they were stopped by the upper caste men. But the act is still remembered as an act of bravery and courage. Another remarkable incident took place in 1906. Children from his community were not allowed education just because they belonged to a lower caste. He continued his efforts to get a law passed by Sri Moolam Praja Sabha in 1906 permitting children of lower caste access to education, and he was successful. The law was passed. But unfortunately, something else happened. A girl called Panjami from his caste, she got admitted in a school. But she was forced to leave the class by the school authority, and the bench that she sat was set on fire. This agitated Ayyangali, who launched a protest against this. And it said that he took the girl by himself back to the school. He was a very courageous leader from the Dalit community. He also went against the restriction placed on women on the basis of their caste, and he also headed the Kallumala Samaram, which I had mentioned earlier in this lecture, where women from lower caste were not allowed to decorate themselves using jewelry made out of silver or gold. Instead, all they were allowed was to use jewelry made out of stone. In the presence of Ayyangali and Changanasheri Parameshwaran Pilla, hundreds of Pulaya women threw away their stone necklaces in public. And this was their way of showing protest to an existing norm. And this happened only because they had a leader like Ayyangali. When Ayyangali formed Sadhujana Paripalana Sangham, his intention was to bring his people together and create awareness among them. One of the greatest achievements was the increased participation of women, unlike a lot of past organizations, not just in Kerala, but even if you take the case of the entire case of India. The women participation were very low, but Ayyangali was successful enough to bring women from his community to take part in the meetings of his organization. He also brought out a journal called Sadhujana Paripalani, which played a very significant role in spreading the ideas of the organization and upholding social freedom. Though this journal was short lived, it did play a significant role in spreading the message. Let's come to the next very important, a prominent Dalit leader after Ayyangali, Poigayil Yohannan, and Pratyaksha Raksha Deva Sabha, which was the organization that he created. Now, when you talk about the Dalit movements in Kerala, the role that these two organizations played together, Sadhujana Paripalana Sangham and Pratyaksha Raksha Deva Sabha, they played a significant role in creating awareness of the Dalit identity among masses. Yohannan worked towards the upliftment of the Paraya community because he was against the discrimination meted out by the Marthomite Church. The other leader, Pambadi Joseph, who belonged to the Pulaya community, he discovered that their ancestry went back to the Chera dynasty of Kerala, probably one of the first inhabitants of this land. And he was brave enough to change his name from Pulaya to Cheramar. Dalit identity and literature, as we see it today, has evolved through many movements and protests led by prominent thinkers and incredible leaders. And it continues to evolve. The stark reality, however, continues to be the discrimination practiced among certain castes and communities. As we mentioned in our previous lecture, there are entire villages in India, even today in this 21st century, that are completely segregated just in the name of their caste. Today, Dalit identity towers among us as one of the most powerful ones ever created, and Dalit literature continues to challenge those traditional norms. And thus, we come to the end of Module 1 through 2 lectures, Part 1 and Part 2. But before we conclude, let's go back and revisit the important points that we discussed. Part 2, we began discussing the Adi Dharma movement, the founders of the movement, the features of the movement, and how it is significant because it was the first casteless movement. And then we moved to Dalit Buddhist movement, probably one of the most popular and strongest Dalit movements in India. The Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's role in it, because he was somebody who converted to Buddhism at a later point of time in his life, the features of Dalit Buddhist movement, and then we came to the role of Brahma Samaj and Arya Samaj in eradicating the social evil of casteism and how different they were. The founders of each movement, the fact that Brahma Samaj wanted to act as a bridge between West and East, whereas Arya Samaj relied more on Vedas, and they thought and they believed in the fact that the West owes it to the East for its progress. So the difference between these two, though they all intended to reform Hinduism. And then we also discussed the Dalit movements in Kerala, the prominent leaders like Ayyangali and the protest and agitations he headed. We discussed Vaikam Satyagraha, the Temple Entry Proclamation, two very important or milestones in the history of Kerala. And we also did mention Poigai Yohanan and Pambadi John Joseph, two other important Dalit leaders in Kerala. So, and the role they played in creating a Dalit identity that we see today. So, these were the important points that we discussed. But before we wrap up, the questions that you can expect from this module are short notes about different movements. It could even be an essay. They can also ask you an essay on different movements. And role of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is definitely very important when it comes to Dalit writing and the movements. Role of Ayyangali as a Dalit leader in Kerala. So these are the questions that you can expect from this module. And as I mentioned in the last module, if you have any doubts, if you need any clarification regarding any concept or a word that's discussed in the lecture, please feel free to comment. Thank you so much for listening.